This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Bob Semenza, who's been researching his family and also has written a couple of books actually, but one specific one about his growing up as an Italian American. So welcome, Bob. Thanks for being here.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be with you. I really looking forward to this.
Great, great. So I want to start with your Italian families and your research. So were both your parents Italian?
Yes, yeah. My father was born here, but my mother was born in Italy, in Calitri. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And where is that?
That's over near Avellino, over near Naples and all. Both my families are from that area. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she came over when she was about 6 years old. So.
And what year was that?
Oh wow! Oh wow! You got me in the early 1900s sometime.
Yeah, and my dad's family is from Naples, and my going back several hundred years, my ninth great grandfather was the Prince of Avellino.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah, I think I heard that in some of your prior podcasts that I've been listening to. That's interesting.
Yeah, and both my families came. Both my parents were born here, but both my families came over around the same time, about 1915.
Okay. Well, my grandfather came over in 1888, around there, before he actually landed at Castle Gardens, I guess, before they started Ellis Island. So, but I'll get into that.
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah, I haven't talked to anybody who's come through Castle Gardens. That's a long time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So with that, do you know why they came to America?
I can only guess it was poverty. I mean, they were, uneducated, and things were rough over there, as you know, during those years and all. And there were, many, many Italians that came over during that period. So, I mean, I unfortunately know nothing about their life over there, and I'll get into that and my frustrations with trying to trace my family history back.
Yeah, so why don't we do that? Why don't we start with your paternal family and where they come from and what you found out about them.
All right. I really started to get into this because I always doubted our family name. I never thought our name was really Semenza, Semenza. I met a lot of Semenzas over the years, but they were never related to me. So I really wanted to go back and find out more about my family history. But first of all, I had to get the name right. So, and I also planned to go over to Italy to visit some of the places where my descendants were from. So I felt I had to learn Italian. So, a number of years ago, I took a number of adult education courses, took a lot of online aids and all, read a lot of books and all, and tried to learn Italian, which I still have not been very successful at. But anyway, I knew very little about my family. About all I knew was my father would say they were from Avellino, but Avellino is a big place. We're in Avellino. He never mentioned the town where they're from. I knew that he always said he was born in Little Italy, which I couldn't quite understand because I knew he was raised in Tuckahoe, New York, in Westchester. And the only other thing I had to go on was at one of the family picnics, I had gotten one of my aunts, I believe, to write down a rudimentary family tree. And she did it on the side of one of these big, these brown grocery bags that she used to get in the grocery store. In fact, if you go to Arthur Avenue now, they still have those bags, and they still, in some of the stores, they'll write down everything you want, add it all up in their heads, Yes. So I had that old bag, and I had a couple of handwritten notes, and that was about it, and. My father said he was born in Little Italy, and he always mentioned the Ferrara family, the famous bakery there on Mulberry Street. And
yes.
My mother, he would say that they would cater their wedding and they were friendly with the family. But, we also knew that they met on a trolley. My father was a conductor on the trolleys that used to run back and forth between where I was born in New Rochelle and Mount Vernon. And we know they met on a trolley. He went into the First World War, but the night before his unit was shipped out, he sneaked off the base. He was at Sports Locum in near Glen Island, near Rochelle, very close to home. He sneaked off the base to go on a date with my mom and went AWOL. So when he got back, he was thrown in the brig and his unit shipped out, and that was that. So that was about all we knew, So I decided, well, let me start, trying to find out more about the family, figure out what the name was. So I had this brown paper bag, that was about it. But it also had some notes. And on the notes, I had listed somewhere in my handwriting, somewhere in my other family members' handwriting, but there was a town listed, San Paolino or something like that, and Tufo, So I went online, and sure enough, there's a Santa Paolino in Avellino, the province of Avellino, and there's also a Tufu. So I started to research family names in Santa Paolino, and I found that, there was Semenzas there. In fact, there was a Via Semenza, which was pretty interesting. But I also found there were a lot of Sementas, Sementa, okay? And then I looked at Tufo and some of the other surrounding towns, and there were a lot of Sementas, TA rather than ZA. And I figured, oh wow, I might have something here, So I kind of put that aside, and I was busy. I've had a number of careers. I was a partner with a international accounting firm in New York City, KPMG, and then I retired early. I was a professor at Quinnipiac University for about 17 years. So, and the other thing was, my wife Marie had Parkinson's disease, so she suffered with that for about 25 years. So I had a lot on my plate, but anyway, I got back into this a couple of years ago, and my granddaughter, Megan Welch, agreed to help me. So we started to go online to try and see if we can find out more about the family. She joined Ancestry.com. And then the first thing we found out was, they did live in Tuckahoe, and they lived in I guess a tenement. It's no longer there. I've tried to find it, but in 1905, and this is interesting, we found my grandfather living in Tuckahoe with his wife, 8 children. His mother, we think, might be his mother-in-law, his brother Luigi. And there was, and I mentioned these handwritten notes, there was a Luigi mentioned. So it was his brother, there was a brother Louis. And then there were 14 boarders listed as laborers. We have no idea what that was all about. And also listed on that on the census was a 3-year-old young girl named Rosie. And that was really interesting. And then so I went back to the brown paper bag, and sure enough, there was a Rose on there. And it sort of had been squeezed in between, sort of as an afterthought. And I asked family members, "Who's Rose?" And we had an Aunt Rosie, who was we knew her, but no one knew anything about this Rose. So that was kind of interesting. And then my granddaughter Megan kept digging into it, and was sitting there one day, and she suddenly looked at me and she says, "I don't know if I should tell you this." And I said, "Well, what is it?" She found Rose. Okay, on a 1910 census taken at the Rome State Custodial Asylum in Oneida, New York, which really struck me hard when I heard that. She was 8 years old. I still get emotional talking about it.
I could tell, yeah.
And then she later on we found out she passed away. I've never taken it beyond that because it's kind of too hard to take that. I had a little aunt here who was in a asylum. What was that all about? I know times were a lot different then, but that was kind of hard to take. In doing this research, you find out a lot, but you also find out things that you really hope you never knew about them. So anyway, so we went on. That was kind of interesting, and then she found out something that really shocked me. She found out my father, at the age of 10, was put into a reform school, I guess, the New York Catholic Protectory in New York City. I don't know if you know anything about
No.
that place.
Oh, no, never
Well,
heard of that.
yeah, we've done a lot of research on it. It was in the Bronx. It was very, very, everything I read about it was very favorable. So it looked like it really was a wonderful place. But, he was there and he spent, as far as we could tell, 5 years there, which is really sad.
Wow.
And the first year he was there, over that first Christmas, he was put into a hospital with tuberculosis. Never knew anything about this. Now, that's kind of interesting. Now, I know you're involved in a tenement museum in New York City, and you know that TB in tenements was pretty common, and that was one of the major afflictions, and also that was also kind of sad. But it looked like he went on to spend about 5 years in that protectorate, and he went home, I think, on one occasion, and then came back. Another couple of other family members, Len and Jennifer Pajali, also were doing research, and they found out a lot about this institution. They also were able to find his what do they call it? A card that they make out when they're an input card or something, of their record while they're in the protectorate and all. And he had very few visitors during that period, which is kind of sad. And she also found out something really interesting. 3 of his brothers were also there for a brief time for petty larceny.
Wow.
So, you just wonder, what was the environment like, in that? It was just very sad. We also found out that one of his sisters, his oldest sister, Michelina, we think her name was, she ran away when she was 14 years old and married a so-called older man. And that aunt wound up in Brooklyn, which is another story I'll get into briefly. So that's where we kind of stood on that. And I guess I kind of put that aside for a while. And then, my Len and Jennifer kept researching it. I kept researching it. And then we found out that there was another relative that we found out in Brooklyn, actually out in Far Rockaway. And I always knew that we had relatives out in Brooklyn or Far Rockaway. I remember as a young boy going out, there was a bar we used to go to, and I remember eating pretzels. That was about it, but we did have relatives. So we found someone named Augustino or Augustini. Anyway, I went back to my handwritten notes, and it was an Augustini on that note, right next to Luigi. So that had to be my uncle, my grandfather's other brother-in-law. So that was interesting. And Michelina wound up living out in Brooklyn someplace, in Canarsie, I think. I never knew her. She must have died, before I was born. But she had a daughter who we knew quite well. She used to come to New Rochelle a lot. And I don't know why I've never asked her about, the family background and all. Now, that's something, I really learned from this. And I tell people, look, ask questions while these people are alive, because once they're gone, they're gone. And write about it, okay? Because, I've listened to some of your podcasts where people have found recordings of their descendants, and that was just mind-blowing to be able to hear, one of your descendants talk and to read about it. So I always encourage people to write about it. So I call it the Brooklyn connection. That remains quite a mystery, okay? So one day my brother mentions to me, he goes, by the way, I've got Daddy's birth certificate. I go, oh, wow, that's interesting. He knew I was doing this research, and so it occurred to him he had the birth certificate. I said, boy, I want to see that, okay? And he gets the birth certificate, and he was baptized in a church out in Far Rockaway. That's kind of true. Again, this Brooklyn Queens connection, and we looked at it, and it looked like it was in script, unfortunately, and it looked like the name was not Semenza, but it was either Cemento or Sementa on the birth certificate. Okay. But, as you know, the problem with these names, and I run into this all the time, is that, our descendants, they were illiterate. Okay. So the only way that they would, their names were written down, they couldn't write their names down. So they would have to say what their names were, and they spoke broken English. So we got all kinds of crazy spellings on these names. So it's pretty easy to see how these names got fouled up and all. So I actually tried to get in touch with that. I did get in touch with that church to set up an appointment for me and some of my family members to go back and look at the records to see if we could find, more information on the name and also other family relatives, and they refused to grant me access.
Really?
I cannot believe that. They said it was confidential information. I said, I'm his son. That's my father. I can't look at that. No. I haven't pursued that, but I intend to go further to see if I can get access to those records, because I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and to that point,
yeah.
I contacted the church where when my mom and dad were married and asked them about the marriage certificate, and they said, sure, just give us the dates and send us a check, and we'll send you a copy.
Exactly. I just don't understand that.
That's crazy.
So I don't know. I was talking to one of the women. I think I'm going to try and get in touch with the pastor and say, look, this is my father. This is my family. I'm not just someone,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So anyway, so that went on, and suddenly Jennifer Pachali, she makes an absolutely amazing discovery. She dug in this, and she finds out, she gets my grandfather's wedding certificate. Okay. And guess where he was living at the time? He was living on Mulberry Street in a tenement. I mean, that just blew my mind. Right up the street from Ferraris. So what my father had said all these years, that made sense. Okay. So he was born in Little Italy, and the name on the marriage certificate was Sementa, Semta. Okay.
Right.
However, when somebody signed it, and his X was next to it, it looks like it might be Cementi, so, TI. So I don't know, but at the moment I'm going with Sementa. That's about all I could do. So I mean, that was kind of it. You mentioned the blog, and what I did was, the other amazing thing about this whole thing is, I mean, my father was the most calm, loving, sweet person you could ever imagine. And never did we have a hint that he had a background like that. And also my uncles, were wonderful people. When I told the family about this, they couldn't believe it. They just could not believe it. And, but so that kind of, it's a dichotomy I can't figure out. The only thing I could figure out is, because I know that he met my mom in the trolley, and she was a tough woman, my mother, but she was a very loving, caring woman and all. And the only thing I think of is somewhere along the line, she must have said to him, look, if you want to get married, you're going to have to straighten out and go the straight and narrow. That's the only thing I could figure that it was her influence that turned his whole life around. She worked in a dress factory, right? I'll get into that. She worked right across the street from the where we lived in Rochelle and all. So, I mean, that's about the only thing that I could figure out. But you mentioned the blog that I have, and I did a story which got very well received about my father, called "A Life Apart," and it was the economy, about the economy between the man that I knew, the father I knew, and the troubled, childhood that he had. He also, I was always amazed. He could do anything. He used to cut our hair, unfortunately. He was a tailor, he was a butcher, he had a butcher shop, he did a million things. Where'd you learn all this stuff, And then I went back and looked at the protectorate I was in, and they had to learn all these trades and all. So
right.
That's where he must have learned it.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
Why didn't he ever tell us? What? I mean, he told no one knew about this. I had a large family. Everyone says, why didn't anybody know about this? Why didn't anybody know about Rosie? So I don't know. It's strange.
Well, I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people say the same thing. That that generation, they didn't really talk a lot about it, especially from Italy. I mean, I was more close to my mom's family than my dad's, but my grandmother never talked about Italy, and me stupidly never thought to ask. But I even asked my cousins who live with my older, that lived or knew my dad's parents very well, um, and they never talked about Italy either.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know. My wife's parents were both from Italy, Luigi and Pasqualina. They were from Benifrio, okay? And, my mother-in-law never spoke English. We got along great because we never could speak to each other. Marie would say, yeah, but you should know what she's saying about you, So, anyway. But Luigi knew some English and all, but anytime I mentioned Italy, they supposedly had property over there. And I said, well, why don't we go back and look at the property? No, America. They wanted no part of Italy, So life must have been tough over there. And I guess they just want to talk about their upbringing and all that. So
Yeah, I mean, I know my uncle, that was my cousin who taped my uncle, and they lived in Bari until 1949, and he
yeah,
wanted to make a trip back, not to stay. He just wanted to go visit, and my aunt
yeah,
no part of going back. They didn't have plumbing or any of that kind of stuff.
exactly.
In 1949, they didn't have it.
Wow. Have you been back now? Have you been back to the?
I've been back. We were there 25 years ago. We were supposed to go last year, and of course we couldn't go.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
I'm still hoping maybe we could get there this year. I don't know. That's not looking great.
Yeah.
But when I went back, I wasn't researching at the time, and I had no idea that when we were in Naples, that my grandmother's family, actually both my father's parents, lived a half a mile from the train station in Naples. And I had no idea.
Really?
We
Is
could have
that
walked
right?
there. We could have walked there. It was that close.
Wow.
Now, have you been back? Have you been back to any of the towns?
I've been to Italy many times.
Oh, great.
Ski a lot over in Italy. I've spent a lot of time in Italy, and but never went to Avellino. And we were there the first time I took my wife to Italy. We went to Amalfi, which we loved.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the Amalfi Coast,
yeah, we stayed in Sorrento.
Yeah. The world. Yeah. And I made a mistake of renting a car, and those crazy roads and all. And I started driving up to Sorrento from Amalfi, and she started crying and all. So I had to turn the car in. So there was no way we were going to drive to the mountains of Avellino or, Campo Bas. So, but I do intend, I don't know when though, to hopefully go back. I have spent a lot of time in Italy, and some of the family members are interested in going back. And now that we got a better handle on the name, maybe we'll do it. I don't know. It's down the road. So
yeah, I mean, we had a whole trip planned with her name's Letizia Sinisi. She runs Italy Rooting, and what she does is she actually gives you, a made-for-you genealogy tour, if you will.
Really,
we were going to go to my third great grandparents were the Duke and Duchess of Capricotta, and
wow,
their palace or their palazzo is the town hall now. So they were going to take us there. We were going to go to Avellino. We were going to go to Calabria, where there are still a couple of homes from the Piermalo family down there. And we were going to have lunch with 20 cousins and all of this stuff. And I was just, I mean, I don't get crushed easily, but I just been so crushed about this whole trip that we were planning for a year.
Oh,
and
wow.
A month before we go, everything's locked down, but the good part about it is since then, I've met so many great people in Italy that I never would have met had I not been doing this. And
sure, this is great.
Gianluca in Calabria says, when you come to Calabria, I'm going to take you to the Piermalo homes. And I met Francesco in Sicily, who told me, I'm going to take you. My wife's mother is from Shaka. I'm going to take you there, and we're going to show you this, and I'm, do all these things. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise that this got postponed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you about growing up as an Italian American in the, I guess in the, 40s and 50s. And, fascinating about the nicknames. I understand your nickname was Chesty. So I'd like to know
Oh
about
yeah,
that.
I still get called Chester by some of the ones who are still alive in the old neighborhood. But I had just an amazing childhood, and I always wanted to write about it. But I got so busy in the business world, and then when I could have went into semi-retirement, I called going from the business world on Wall Street to college professor is like semi-retirement. So I started writing the book, and it took me a long time to write it. And I was amazed at the memories I had and all. And finally, in 2007, I published the book. But let me start. I was brought up in the West, okay, up the West, West New Rochelle, New York, 45 minutes from Broadway. Georgia
Yes,
Cohen.
yes, yeah.
That's all about West New Rochelle, okay. It was a very unique neighborhood. It was a very small neighborhood, mainly Italians, and some people get offended by this, but we called them colored people back in those days. We didn't call them blacks or African. They were colored people, and that's what they were. We had a lot of coloreds and, Italians, but mainly Italians and all. And so I always wanted to write about that. And it was a very unique neighborhood. And I'm sure you've heard this from a number of people. It was a very close-knit neighborhood. We were surrounded by family and friends, and never a dull moment. But I thought it was just great. And I called the book The Last Best of All Times, because that's what I think they were. I don't think we'll, unfortunately, ever have a period like that again. And when I talk to people about the book and all, and tell them, I wanted to preserve the memories, and people I talk about will say, well, yeah, that's great, because we talk to our descendants, our children and grandchildren about it, and they have no idea, what life was back. And so I wanted to preserve those memories so that, we have them, continuing on. So that's why I wanted to write the book, to mainly preserve the memories and all. And, when I wrote it, and I had a book signing at the Boys Club, and that was a big thing in our lives in West New Rochelle, which was very well attended. I've had a number of book signings. It was a self-published book. I've had a number of book signings, and a couple of years ago, I went back to the St. Anthony's Feast back in West New Rochelle, and that was really interesting, and sold a lot of books. And so the book has been very well received. But let me tell you a little bit about the book and all. We lived in a two-family house, okay, 228 Union Avenue. All right. We lived in a house with my aunt and uncle, and it was my brother and I, my brother Charlie and I, and then our two cousins downstairs. But our fathers were brothers, and our sisters and our mothers, I got that screwed up. Our mothers were sisters.
Oh, wow.
So two brothers married two sisters.
Yeah.
And we lived in one house. So we always called ourselves blood brothers, because we were more than just cousins.
Yes.
We really were a lot closer than that. In fact, a lot of people couldn't tell us apart, especially my cousin Ronnie and myself. And, I'd walk down the street and they'd say, are you Bobby or Ronnie? I'm Bobby. Oh, is your mother the tall one or the short one? So that's what they would say and all. But so we lived there, and it's interesting because my mother's family, they were Cadellas. They came over, and they actually bought property on Union Avenue. They had the house where we lived, and then next door they had a grocery store, which I think they ran at one time, and there was a hall above it which they would have festivities and all. But they lost that the grocery store during the Depression, I think. So we had the one house, but we lived on the top floor. My aunt and uncle lived on the bottom floor, but the bottom floor was bigger and all than the top floor. But I think it was because my uncle, who lived downstairs, had emphysema, so he couldn't make the stairs. So I think that's why we lived in the top floor. But it was just wonderful. We had cousins all around the corner, Food was a big thing in our lives. I mean, we lived in a block between 2nd and 3rd Street. I mean, there were 2 grocery stores. There was a chicken market across the street. We used to go get live chickens. I mean, that's a book in itself. We had a fish market on the corner. Okay. We had, a tailor. We had everything. It was like our own little world right there. Pizzerias around the corner, 3 bakeries.
Right. Yeah.
And it was nothing like sitting on those steps on a summer's evening and smelling the bread. Oh my God. And then going down and getting hot bread, right? Loading it with butter, or having my mom make pizza frite or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but food was a big thing, and Sundays and holidays were just unbelievable. And that's why it was called Chesty. It was a lot of food to eat, And the only thing I would not eat was fish. Okay, my mom.
I don't like fish either.
Yeah,
I don't.
Wait, but we on Fridays, as you know, you have to eat fish. Okay, so I would eat macaroni with ricotta, pot cheese, or peppers and eggs, and that was all I ate as a kid. Now, all I eat is fish. I mean, I love fish. I'll eat any kind of fish. My mother's rolling over in her grave, but she used to say this and all stuff. So, but Sundays and holidays, I mean, it's funny back in those days. We'd always seem to have the big feast down in Anchorage, my aunt's kitchen on the first floor, and my mother and my aunt they wouldn't even sit down. I mean, they were just there serving all the men. I mean,
that's right.
Probably people get annoyed when I say this, but that's the way it was in those days, and we would start at lunchtime, and we'd never get off the table. I mean, we would just go from lunch into God knows what into dinner, just eat all day, so it was phenomenal.
I fry eggplant now with the air conditioner going on, and I'm thinking of my aunts in the tiny little kitchen. The house was filled, the tiny little kitchen, frying eggplant when it's 90 degrees outside, like it's nothing,
Right, exactly. And we don't have air conditioning, of course. No way,
No, and my mom comes from a family of 9.
Wow.
So we would, my grandmother's birthday was in the summer. Luckily, we'd be outside and everything. But to your point, I mean, there was endless food, and I grew up in College Point, which wasn't really an Italian neighborhood, but my mom's family was, and my dad's family, they were both from Corona. So to your point, the bakeries and the sausage places and everything was,
Corona, yeah.
And everybody, I mean, in 1950s, 1960s, everybody was Italian. I mean, the whole block. The old ladies with the black dresses and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, perennial. I call them perennial mourning for their husbands. They were always in black. Yeah,
yeah.
And I write about that. That's in the book, of course.
Yeah. Well, my dad's mom, she wore black. I never saw her in anything but black. My grandfather died when I was 2 months old in 1951, and my grandmother wore black till the day she died. My mom's mom wore black for 3 days. Then she was back to the print Vestalia, and the Italian ladies were crazy over it. Our friends were like, how could you do it? And she said, what am I going to do? I'm comfortable or whatever. So, 2 completely different, personalities, but we had the same meal. We would start, Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter would start at, 1:00, go at 6:00 till 6:00, till you had dessert.
There you go.
About a half hour later, my aunt would be asking us, you want a turkey sandwich? Or so let me ask you this. Let me ask you, you had non-Italian friends, I'm sure. Did you have to try to tell them, don't eat so much on this course?
No, I did not. I did not have any non-Italian friends.
Really?
I did not know what a Protestant was. I went to 6 years of Catholic school. I don't think I met a Protestant until I was. Our world. You were either Italian or American, okay? And the Americans were Mexicans,
Yeah.
And the only Mexicans I knew were, a few Jewish people or a few Irish people, but no, I didn't have any non-Italian friends other than the color guys, and they, So that was it. So
Yeah, well, we used to go to the beach, and we go to the
yeah.
beach with eggplant parmesan, sausage and peppers. Uh, and you look at the, the
Yeah,
Americans
they had
over at the
tuna
next
fish.
blanket, they had tuna fish and peanut butter and jelly.
Well, no, I'll tell you what we had though. We had two schools. We had St. Joseph, the Catholic school, which I went, of course, and Columbus School across the street. Okay. So sometimes we would go to Columbus School for some reason in the cafeteria. We didn't have a cafeteria in St. Joseph's, but they used to serve chipped beef on toast and those American dishes. And what's this stuff, So that was about my only exposure to non-Italian food, until later in life. Let me ask you, what about the Malachi? Did you have the Malachi in your neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah. I read about that. We had when you were overlooked, you had to go to the Malachi lady for the cure, and it always worked, Home remedies were a big thing in my family, okay? And I think that's the reason why I very seldom miss school, because I don't want to make believe I was sick because,
Yeah, the remedy was worse than the disease.
In school, enemies, or somebody used to have this thing look like a weapon, a throat swab. If you had a sore throat, oh my God.
I never heard of that. No, I didn't. I missed that one.
With Odgerol, you ever heard of Odgerol? Or if you were really bad, iodine.
Really?
Oh man, home remedies were. So I would always.
I mean, the enemas I know because my Aunt Dolly, she was the queen of the enemas. Anything that you had, she was giving you an enema. And of course, when you were sick, you had the pastina and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And Coca-Cola syrup was a big thing. If you
Never
had a
had
sore
that.
throat. Yeah, see that was, and I'm a little bit later than you, so maybe that we went
But
from iodine to Coca-Cola syrup.
I never heard that. We had something called a mal, which I don't think nobody mentions to me. My father never really took care of the yard and all. There was, weeds in the back. So they used to go in the back and get this weed or something and then boil it, and it was just so soothing and so delicious. A mal, it must have been a dose, probably marijuana or something. I don't know. that I really enjoyed. A mal was good. So offset the iodine. The throat swabbers, they were nasty little instruments.
And Bioski, of course, which I don't see that anymore.
I got it right there in my cabinet. Oh yeah,
I can't find it.
Brioche, of course. Oh, go to Arthur Avenue.
Yeah, I guess that's where you have to go. You have to go to.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, I used to be in Arthur Avenue all the time, so I'm going to go back there, and I think next week, because I think it's open again. But this has been terrible. The other thing in the neighborhood was street games, which I'm sure you had. I mean, we didn't, we were never inside. We were outside from morning till night. We always unsupervised. There was no little league or anything like that. We did have the Boys Club League. The Boys Club was a big thing in our lives, and they had organized activities and all. But most of the games we made up were games we played in the street. We didn't have a lot of money. I thought we were rich, but we really didn't have a lot of money. So we'd play football with a milk carton filled with paper, and would play box ball. And so when in the business world, I meet a lot of people, and especially if they were Italian, I'd always talk to them about growing up and all. And everyone was always the same. I mean, they all came from similar backgrounds. They didn't have a lot of money, but they were happy, and they just loved their childhood. And they always talked about their games that they played, stick ball and all these games and all. But I never found anyone who played a unique game that I invented called clothespins. We had a clothespin league because our streets, there were too many cars and all. So we never played stick ball. We used to play with clothespins in my backyard, and I had a regular league. I was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan, which is another story because I was the only Brooklyn Dodger fan in West New Rochelle, and that was the golden age of baseball.
Yes,
you had the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Yanks, and I'd argue then because every year my team would lose, and I'd have to take all this abuse, but. So I love baseball. So I organized this league. It was back before you had the reserve clause and all that. So everybody had to sign contracts. They were spring training. There were tryouts. I still got the records. I kept the records
Wow,
from
that's great.
all the pitching records, the hitting records. So I never found anyone who ever played clothespin baseball. So it's lucky we didn't get our eyes poked out, playing with the clothespins. So we had a lot of clubs, Crusaders, Cowboys and Indians. Movies were a big thing. We used to, I don't get arrested. We used to sneak into the movies a lot. We had some unique ways of sneaking into different movies, which I write about and all. Basically, we lived, as I found out later, in a sheltered life, and you see everything that was going around us. But, it was the last best of all times in my mind,
Yes, no,
Yeah.
I agree. And
Yeah.
for anybody who wants to, I'll put the link out there, but for anybody who wants to, find the website or find the book, where would they go?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. So they can just go, you type in my name or type in last best of all times, it's on Amazon. What I did was working with mainly my grandson, Robert Scala, who set up the website for me. These young people are amazing and all. But we got together with another cousin who's an Emmy Award winner, producer and editor. He's won multiple Emmy Awards, and some other family members who have theatrical experience and been writing a screenplay. I mean, I've been doing most of the writing, and they've been doing the criticizing, and to try and get, because I wanted to do something like the Wonder Years. I don't know if you remember the Wonder Years. It's probably more we have the narrator who's looking back on his life, and I just thought with all the divisiveness that's going on in the country now and everything, it'd be great to have a show which talks about those times and talks about the family and all. So I spent a lot of time, working on a screenplay, and we tried to make, we've made efforts to try and pitch the show and talk to some people and all, but then the virus hit and all that sort of stopped, But so what I decided to do was, because I love to write. I mean, with all this time I have now, it's a good way for me to spend time. So what I decided to do was to write it as a novel, which is not easy to do. So I'm writing a novel now, and then hopefully down the road someplace, I hope to turn it into a screenplay and maybe get a break somewhere like Chaz Palminteri got, with the Bronx Tale, and maybe get it as a series or something. I don't know. It's a dream, impossible dream, I call it.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm working on something myself, and I know it's hard. But one other thing that we have in common is I know you wrote a beautiful song about your wife. I've written two songs for my wife.
Really?
Not quite as operatic as yours. One is kind of a a rock ballad, and the other one is she kept telling me, because I was in a band, that she kept telling me, why are you always writing songs about boobs and beer? So the second song I wrote about boobs and beer.
Can you send those to me? Or
absolutely, yeah, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, I'd love to listen to them. Oh, that was quite a story. And as I said, my wife suffered many years, and by the way, as I think I mentioned, I did write a book. I started keeping a diary when she got sick and all, and I did it for a couple of reasons. I did it mainly to kind of just sit down at the end of the night and collect my thoughts and write down what happened, and then try and plan, what to do for the future and all. But so I had a lot of copious notes, and so when I wrote the book about her, it was I had a lot to go on. And incidentally, I had a quote that was, I think I responded to something in the New York Times, and it got published. And I talked about kind of the positive side of caregiving, which is kind of, how can caregiving be positive? But, I pointed out the things you got to do to keep positive and to maintain your life and all that. And some young journalists on the West Coast found this and hunted me down. She actually found me, got my phone number through a sailing club I belong to. And she's writing a book on caregiving, on the quote positive side of caregiving. Mm-hmm. So she's read my book, which she really loved and all. And she's I'm working with her now on the book. Basically, she's going to include a section on the book about me. But the song was interesting because my wife spent a number of months in a hospital, and I didn't think she was going to survive. So, I wanted to let her know how I felt, that I'd always be there for her. So the song was called Near to You, and that's how I got to write the book. Again, I learned I'm terribly a musician. I've still got my keyboard. I'm terrible, but I love it, So I learned a lot about music, composition, and so that's how I got that.
Yeah, well, I'm a horrible guitar player, but I had a
But
good
it's
friend
great,
that helped me. Yeah, I have my good friend Brian. We wrote songs together again, and I will come up with the idea and usually the lyrics. And I would say, Brian, I think this should be a rockabilly song, and he'd say, okay. And the next day, he'd have the whole thing worked out with a lead and everything like that. So yeah, I'll definitely send you some of that
Yeah,
stuff.
no, I definitely want to hear that. Now you're living where you were living where in Jersey someplace, right?
I'm in Bradley Beach, New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now you're involved in the Tennessee Museum, I think, or in the city.
I've interviewed Dr. Shelsa, who's I guess the president or curator of the Italian American Museum. It was in an old bank.
Okay, yeah.
And they're building their own building.
Oh, right, yeah. I
Yeah.
did go online and check that out. Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's supposed to be Columbus Day this year. It's supposed to reopen. It's gonna
Really?
open. And
Yeah.
so I'm
I
hoping to
had
go
an
there.
uncle. I had an Uncle Columbus, by the way. The story, Uncle Bumbo. You talk about characters, But the story goes, he was named Columbus because his father lost a bet. I had to name him Columbus, but he was a character, Uncle Bumbo. He was something else. Well, maybe we can get together in the city someday, and when things settle down. I'm in the city. I used to be in the city a lot.
Absolutely.
I bike all over the city. I bike probably every neighborhood in New York City. I love to be there.
Oh yeah, no, sure, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm almost at the end of my 2 days, 2 weeks. I mean, so
okay, yeah, I'm well beyond that. So that's good. Yeah,
yeah, it was tough tracking it down here. And my wife is
Yeah.
she got her second shot yesterday. So
Yeah,
so we're getting there. So well, this has
that's
been
great.
absolutely fascinating. A lot of fun. I can't tell you how much fun I had.
I've enjoyed it. I was apprehensive about this, but I really enjoyed it. And
No, I think we could have done 4 hours on it.
Oh yeah, okay.
But thanks again, and I
Okay,
really
well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right,
Okay.
all right, take
Okay,
care.
buongiorno. Hey,
Buongiorno, yeah.